Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's My Games Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we're going to be talking about how you can steal ahead of the competition and innovate by looking backwards. Now, I'm looking forward to today's show because I have absolutely zero control because our very special guest today is Mr. Callum McCormack. Hello, Callum. How you doing?
Very good day.
That's it. He's leaving now.
And that's enough. Oh, now, let me turn the volume down on my monitors. Because I don't want to hear you 5 seconds after you actually talk, Mike.
Oh, okay.
So, Mike, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Mike and Kirsty, my name's Callum. A very good day. Now, years ago, Mike and I were, I suppose the expression is sparring partners. So I was a young salesman. I worked for a company called Computer People. Mike was obviously a company owner, right? I was slightly in awe of. But Mike tells me, I think this is right, Mike, you a couple of times have gone to an organisation, and in the old days, you'd go to an organisation, you'd flick through the visitors book to see which other recruitment companies have been in before. And a couple of times I would see yesterday Mike Ames was in, and a couple of times I think you saw my name had been in before you.
Callum McCormack. So, yes, I did.
Yeah. So, and that was a lot of fun. But let's just go back a bit further because I want to talk today, particularly when you invited me on the show. We were, ladies and gentlemen, Mike and I, we know we pick up the phone, we have a little chat every now and again, particularly if I'm bored in the car and I want to speak to some old grey, you know. And and one of the things I wanted to address, the whole planet, is customer service. Now, I didn't really know what customer service was, even as a salesman. I just did my best, you know. I couldn't put my finger on it. My boss said, "What is customer service?" Oh, I just try hard, you know, that sort of thing. About 20 years ago, I had a second-hand amplifier that had come out of a theatre that drove the speakers in the theatre. It was out of production. It was made by a company in America called Crown, okay? I emailed Crown. I said, "Hello, there's a little screw in the back of the handle and it's loose and I've lost one of the screws. Can you tell me the specification of the screw so I can buy one?" Because you're in America, I'm in the UK. And the lady said, "If you give me your address, I'll put a couple in the post for you." And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, 8 of these blooming screws arrived. And I thought, well, I just couldn't quite believe that there was service out there that delivered that. The laugh is about 5 years later, I'm a drummer as well as this crazy guy. There was a screw missing at the back of my electronic Roland drum kit. So I thought, oh, I know what they do in the music industry. I can get another free one. So I email Roland support in Milton Keynes, you know, very far away. And said, "Can you tell me how I get hold of one of these bolts?" They said, "Yeah, they're £1.10 each and £13.50 admin charge, right?" So when I had a lightning strike in my house, and every piece of electronics in the house, whether it was in a box, plugged in or not, blew up, including all my amplifiers. So, of course, what amplifier company did I go to buy my new amplifiers? It was going to be Crown. And I didn't buy another Roland. And so it's not until, and of course the other one, there's a fellow called Dan Street. He's the owner, president, or whatever they say in America, of a company called Pacific Asian Enterprises. They make big mega yachts called Nordhaven. Now, I'm old pals with Dan.
Nordhaven stories.
Yeah, I'm old pals with Dan. And he once told me, you know, I hadn't coined this. He once told me that you do whatever is right. Just do what's right. So he's commanded his salespeople, his support people, everybody he employs, customers on the phone with a problem, you just do what's right, okay? If that means flying a screw first class to Tasmania, you know, you do that. If it means you put it in the post, you do it that way. If it means delivering it in person, do it that way. You do whatever, you balance it all out and you just do whatever is right. And that's
I'll tell you,
customer
on that,
service.
Right? I'll tell you a little Mike Sparks story. So Mike was my business partner back in the day. And but I'd worked for him first as my boss. He was obsessed with doing that. He was obsessed with doing it right. And one time we'd put a permanent member of staff, so a permie candidate, through the process into Lucas in aftermarket operations. And it was a big deal for us because we'd never traded with Lucas before. And the guy rang me up for some reason on the Sunday and said, I'm not going tomorrow. They came to me on Friday with a counter offer. I've mulled it over and I've decided to stay wherever he was. It's like, shit. I mean, we've all had that. It's like, oh no, that's really bad. Bad news, right? So I told Mike, rang him up immediately. He said, I'll handle this. So he went to the client in Hampton Street in Birmingham. And he was there for when the guy turned up in the morning. So he must have been there 8 o'clock or something. He's there. So I'm going to come and see you. So what's the problem? He said, well, I've got to sort this out. He said, we've had somebody blow up and not deliver this, that, and the other. So basically what he said is, we'll find you a replacement for nothing. We won't even charge, right? So not we'll find you a replacement, which would be kind of rightish thing to do. In Mike's mind, that we had let him down, not that we could have done anything. Maybe we could have qualified him better. I don't know. Mike said no. And I had to work then to find someone else to put them in, and they took them from us. Right? But I think that was the turning point for that particular company for us. It was that thing that we did, which separated us out. And I think if you're too obsessed with profit as opposed to service levels, great service levels bring profit, but you've got to make sacrifices sometimes.
Money can't be the sole driver. It was for me for a long time, and I began to hate the job. You've got to love the job, and then the money comes.
Yeah, you do.
If you got to really enjoy, and you do the customer service thing. And now, before we started, ladies and gentlemen, today, Mike was saying about some of the old techniques that we used to use, which was you phone a customer up and you say, right, I've got 3 guys here, but I really want to talk them through with you. So I'm free for a coffee this afternoon. And you go, well, all right then. I jump in the car, take the 3 CVs along. I've screened these guys. I've spoken to them again this morning. I've made notes on the CV, stuff that's not on the CV, but I think it's appropriate. I've put post-it notes, whatever else. I've taken them along, copy each, and I've manually gone through paragraph by paragraph with the customer why, candidate A, candidate B, candidate C. And I even sometimes, I don't know if you did this, Mike, sometimes the customer's after a bit of guidance. He said, well, which one's your favourite?
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just put my cards on the table. I'll go, well, 1, 2, 3. And he might debate it with me. Oh, I think why is that then? Because of this, this, and this. I really like the experience. Of course, he didn't tell me. He was just a bonus. And I'd say, well, they're all available next Monday afternoon. I've already pre-managed that. You can go back. When you take the vacancy down, I used to do this project managing your requirement. I've remembered it. Where I say to the customer, brilliant. So if I find a guy who can do this, 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 you'll hire him. Yes, fine. When can you interview? Well, I haven't got the CVs yet. Yeah, but let's get the interview slots now because, these are busy people. And when I'm presenting them, I'll say, your interview, if you get an interview, is next Wednesday afternoon. Oh, okay, fine. So I've got you all lined up. Normally, that's
the thing, though. That obviously, people nowadays deal with clients all over the country, all over the world.
How are you supposed to handle virtual working and
you can't just drop in, But what you can do is you can present your CV live over Teams or Zoom. So I had a case. I went to Trust House Forte years and years ago, and it was the first time I'd done this. And I presented. We used to send the CVs, a lot of CVs by fax. It was quite a way away.
That's
and
right.
he said, can you come over and talk to me about them? And when I'd first started in recruitment, my boss, Paul Ingram, had said, you're a recruitment consultant. Recruitment is what you do, but consultant is what you are.
Yeah.
So it was stuck with me. So you are a consultant. They are going to consult with you, going to ask your opinions. You do the work. You can answer the questions. So I went over there with these 5 CVs and I went through them all because we used to really get to know the people that we submitted, warts and all, and I could present the CV in such a way that, like you said, this is my favourite, then this is my second, and then this is my third. They're all good, they all do the job, but this is the order I'd take them in. At the end of that, we'd actually booked in, not telephone, because we didn't have mobile phones in those days, but we'd actually got the interview slots. And I think the requirement, this is what stuck me, the requirement was like for 1 person, they took 3. And they only took them because I presented them the right way. And I think you don't have to do this now in person. It's not necessary. If you can and you want to, it's great to get in front of a client and have a coffee and talk a few things over. But you can certainly do this over Teams. You can talk through. Let me talk you through bit by bit. Kirsty, I can see you've got.
I have a question, right? And I actually know the answer to it, but I want to ask it anyway. Why? Why is it so much better to do that than to send it over an email when people are busy? Because some people might say, me doing with them is going to take them more time. It's another meeting they've got to go through. Why don't I just send it across and they can do it themselves? Why would you suggest doing it in person?
I reckon there's 3 or 4 different answers to that. The more time you spend with somebody, the more time they think they should spend with you.
Yeah. That's true. The more you invest,
and the better you get to know them, and the better you get to know them and them you. And I used to say to a customer, that's fine, I've got this vacancy, great. And he'll cut a deal and I'll drop him 0.5% or 1% on the basis that you'll take my call if I ever call, right, whatever you're doing, because I'm not going to waste your time. It'll be a 30-second thing, okay? So if Callum's on the phone, just remember, it'll only be 30 seconds. He's probably after a yes, no. Yes, Callum. Yes, no, thank you. Bang. And they loved dealing with that because it was, that's about negotiation as well, though. But it's just getting ahead of the curve when it comes to getting the buy-in initially. I mean, they've really got a problem, haven't they? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when I was a recruiter, as a young recruiter, I never realised really what a problem was. Because, I mean, my problem was I just want numbers on the whiteboard, right? I didn't genuinely appreciate that the customer needed this guy in.
Mm.
You know, I just think, I've got a vacancy. As far as the customer's concerned, they don't give a shit, actually, that they've given you the vacancy. They just want to hire the right guy. Well, so if you go on, Mike.
I had an advantage over you because I'd worked in IT. We were IT recruiters, so I knew what it was like to be short of somebody in the team.
Yeah, we are.
And I knew what it was like to get shit CVs through, and I knew what it was like for recruiters to let you down and lie and misrepresent their people. It was horrendous, really. Mm. And I think you're right. Just to answer the question that Kirsty asked, the more you can talk to people. So I prefer to be in person with someone to build this. We're talking about building relationships now. The more you in someone's company, the stronger the relationship be. If you can't be in someone's company, you can be on a video. If you can't be on a video, you can be on a telephone. If you can't be on a telephone, you can be on social media or text. If you can't be on that, you can email them. It's in that. Yeah. That's the pecking order, really. Yeah. So the more you can push up that pecking order, the stronger the relationship will be. And your objective, and I wanted to tell a story about Callum in a minute, but your objective is to be the number one supplier. That's the deal. And yeah, if you're rubbish at recruitment, you won't achieve that post. But if you
no, you won't.
No, but if you're good, not brilliant, but good, and they like you, then you will, right? So the story was that Land Rover Parts, computer people who Cal worked for, biggest recruitment company in the country in those days, owned by Adecco now, I think. Anyway, they computer people had a deal where they got 50% of all the requirements out of LRP, and there was a lot of them in those days, right?
I negotiated that.
Did you? Well, you did a good deal, and we were all fighting for the other 50%.
It was originally 100%, and I sat with, I can't say who, in reception with the document which had 100% on it, and he said, "Well, what am I going to tell? I don't know, Mike or." So what am I? He was worried about his relationships. I spotted immediately. I said, "Well, let's just guarantee 50%." And he went, "Oh, thank God for that."
Well, it was fixed because we couldn't get by. I mean, eventually it drifted away, but for years it was like that, and I couldn't get in there. I couldn't get in. There were
until they made me redundant.
Yeah, no. Computer people got half of it, but there were a load of agencies fighting for the rest of it. It was a very popular site. They paid good money.
Yeah,
people you could place, right? So I managed to get one of our permanent member of staff in there. Rob Malaband went there as a permie, so he was employed
really?
by us. Yeah, he did. Yeah, went to work for
I know
Martin Fellows. Yeah. Anyway, so and I said went to see Pete Key, who was one of the guys there, and I said, why aren't we getting people in here? You know, we got good people. He said, look, Mike, it's like this. Like you said, Callum, I've got a job to do here. I'm a project manager, so I've got this project to get in. I'm always busy, and then when I need to hire someone, I want to do it as quickly as possible. So the first thing I'll do is I'll look to see if any of the people that are mentioned to me have worked here before. Because if they have, I'll just take them. like that. I won't interview them. I'll just have them in if they're any good. The second thing is I like the CVs to be laid out so I can just look at the front page and I can decide whether I want to move forward or not. Right? Because if I do, I'll go for it. If I don't, then I'll dig in. And he said, your CVs are just like all the others. So I said to him, well, okay, two things then. If I was to go out and figure out who all the contractors were that had worked here and ring you up when one of them's coming up, would that be okay? And like you said, he said, yes, no, yes, fine, okay. And also, for those people you don't know, it's never worked here before, if I just do a front page, which has all the skills you want, number of years experience, last use, and my assessment of how good they are, plus a proper consultant's comments, like as a consultant, I'm telling you, warts and all, this person's a three-dimensional CV, we called it. Would that make a difference? He said it would. We went from one person, which was Rob, within 9 weeks, within 3 months, we got 9 people on site, which was like well over £1 million for us in those days. So, and that was just because I took the time to go and see Pete and understand his issues and his problems and then figure out a way that I could work towards them. And that made a big difference. We became the second biggest supplier after CP, Computer People, to Land Rover Parts. And I can pin it all back to that thing. So I think another message here is I don't think these days we spend enough time building relationships. It's not about doing a great job. I mean, that's part of it, but it's getting to know someone and understanding them. And, do you not think?
Yeah. Now, so relationships, because there might be people watching this one day and they'll think, yeah, but it's all very well you old guys saying relationships, but how do I get a relationship in the first place? So now, years ago, I remember going to Dick Creswell and saying to him, I looked at the board and I looked at the dates. Right? He's my boss. He was my boss. And I remember saying to Dick, just to let you know, I don't think I'm going to put anything on the board for March. And they would say it was like the 5th of March or something, He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I've got X, Y, and Z in April and then Z in May, but I just don't think I'm going to put anything in March. So he sat me down and he got me to agree that my life depended on me doing business. Do you remember this story?
I do, yeah. I remember Dick Creswell too, so yuck.
He said, so what you're saying then, Callum, is that your life you've just had a new baby and you're married and you got your mortgage and everything else, and your life depends on you doing a deal in March. Yeah, but you're telling me you're not going to do a deal in March. Yeah. So he said, okay. And he opened his drawer and he pulled out an imaginary, and he talked it all through. It was a 6-shooter, Smith & Wesson, chromed, stainless steel. Oh, there's Tim, one of my mates. Stainless steel guns, right? It's an imaginary gun. He said, how about then, on the 31st of March, if you haven't done a deal and your life depends on it, I'll just execute you.
The EDI people are having like this is the sales now, big start. Yeah.
It was kind of all psychological fun. I mean, I knew he didn't have a gun. I knew he wasn't going to execute me, but he was trying to kind of make a point, you see. So he said to me, so what are you going to do differently right now to change your March? I said, well, I don't know. It's like 4:30 in the afternoon. I said, tell you what, I'll go home, sleep on it, and I will start whatever it is tomorrow. Okay? So now, I actually, because I saw quite a creative mind, I played along with the fact that I was actually going to be executed, right? Of course I wasn't. I just played along with the fact that, if I don't do a deal, what would I genuinely do different if I was going to be shot? So what happens is your vocabulary changes. I mean, obviously I couldn't tell the customer because it was a secret between me and Dick, right? But I could tell the customer, look, have you got any vacancies that I can fill? Because if I don't, I'll get executed. I mean, you can't actually do that. But what happened is, and I went through, because I had a little car box. We all got computer CRM systems now, which are a pain in the arse, if you don't mind me saying. You can manage 200 or 300 people, companies, and leads in a card box really nicely. You can flick through, pull them out, who the phone calls I want to make. You can really scratch your head about it. And I started making phone calls. And instead of saying, hello, is Mike Ames in today? Right? I changed the tune altogether. I went, oh, hello, I need to speak to Mike Ames now. And what would happen is, half the time they wouldn't go, who's calling, is that you needed to speak to Mike Ames. And they'll go, oh, hold on, I'll see if I can track him down. And that would really help me. He's out now, but he'll be in by 2. Brilliant, I'll call then. Yeah, well, just telling Callum, because I knew never give him a surname, I'll just say Callum, If he was very senior, I might just use the first name. Oh, hi, I need to speak to Mike. Is he about today? Now, if Mike was forever getting phone calls because he's the managing director, she'll know exactly who Mike is. Now, what happened is, within a couple of days, I was getting through to people that I'd spent 6 months trying to get hold of. Because I used a different word. A different word.
I think there's a couple of things about this, because the whole point of this was to talk about the old days and then drag it into the modern days, right? So clearly, my advice is don't hold a gun. And
please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please. Okay. Please don't do that.
But that's not the point. The point is, and it's about, first of all, I think the first thing is, I can't do this. Yes, you can. You can. What you've done is given up too soon. And certainly when it comes to resourcing, finding candidates, it's a really tough vacancy. There's nobody out there. Well, somebody will get this job. Somebody will.
Eventually. That's right.
So that might as well be you. Carry on. Keep looking. Keep going.
Yeah.
So I think there's this thing about changing the way in which you think about success. I think for 10 years or so, we've had a market that's been very, very healthy. And so therefore you could do a bit of work on a vacancy. I don't want to, disparage recruiters, but you can do a bit of work. And then if it's a bit tough, or you get a few CVs, you put them across, press on to the next vacancy, and so on and so forth. But when vacancies become a little tight, you can't do that. You've got to go back and back and back. And when I was trained, I had to go back at least 3 times. It's like, what you got, Mike? Well, I got this. That's not good enough. You better go back. What you got? I've got nothing. Well, you got to go back. And weirdly, almost always you would find someone. Because you'd end up being very creative about, like you say, changing the language, or talking to somebody that might know somebody that knows somebody. And then strangely enough, they do. You really work the network because you have to. And I think the takeaway on this one really is around perseverance and language, an understanding of if you do change your language, and who knows whether that would work now, but if you do change the language, you might get a different result from it. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, for sure.
Sorry, Callum, you go, and then I've got a question for you both.
All right, write it down so I don't forget. So in today's, we're finding people, right? If you could find, we've all done it, and there might be people watching this, and they look at their vacancy board. If I could find every one of these people, I'd be a millionaire, right? So, and I've looked on LinkedIn, and I've done this, and I've done that, and I can't find anybody, right? So in our day, and I'm not saying, in our day, and you've got it easy and everything else.
The boring parts, talking about the old days.
Because you've got different pressures, right? The different pressure is if someone is available on LinkedIn, he's fed up with the phone calls, he switches his phone off for a week, right? So it's a different, it is different. And by the way, I remember phoning a candidate when mobile phones just came out on his landline, right? He was at home. And his mobile started to go, and I just had a vacancy, and I knew there was one person in the Midlands that could do this, and his phone was ringing. Oh, no. He said, I'm on the other line at the moment to Mike Ames, let's say. I went, hang up on him. Just hang up on him. I got this amazing job. I need a yes, no off you. And then it wasn't you, Mike, but it was the same job. Anyway. What I'm saying is I have had people to hang up one line to take, because I knew it would be the same job. And that's the point. Sometimes there's a lot of competition. So what we're after very often are people who are not on the database, right? So all those people that I supplied to Land Rover Parts, Mike, that you were talking about, where you did £1 million worth of turnover in 9 weeks, or annualized. Is most of them were never, we didn't have a CV for them or anything. They were people that I was trained not to say, do you know anybody else? Right? The automatic answer to any question is no. It just is. Will you clean the car? No. It's like, tomorrow or whatever. It doesn't matter if your wife asks you something, if your daughter asks you something, it's generally not now, no, right? But you could, it's about the language, you change the language around, and you could just say, okay, so that's a shame that's not right for you. Now I want you to look back. I see you worked at ABC Electronics last year. Who was there that you think might be right for a job like this? Now, 20 times, 1 out of 20, you might get an answer, right? But that 1 out of 20 is the candidate you're after. So yes, another 20 phone calls. And I used to come in, I don't know about you, Mike, I used to do all my resourcing on a Saturday.
Well, mine was the evenings when I got in normally, sometimes Saturday, sometimes Sunday afternoon. But it's interesting you say that, because on one time, again, this is contract, you wouldn't do it quite so much with perm, although you could. But if I knew that there were contractors on site somewhere and I'd got someone who was there who I knew, I would be buying the beer all night to get those contractors out and get the CVs. And once I flew from Birmingham to Newcastle because I had a contractor called Dave Pitcher, and he was based at he was working through me at British Gas in Newcastle, and he said there's loads of contractors, and I'll come up and we'll take them out. Took 6 or 7 out or something, got all their CVs, paper CVs in those days, and within 12 months I'd placed them all.
Amazing,
right? Again, huge amounts of money. I think this idea that if you want your candidate base or your contractor base to help you, you have to put yourself out a bit, really. You have to be seen to adding value to them or buying beer, which I find works a lot. Although Kirsty tells me not so much these days.
Yeah. Now, Kirsty, still hold that in your mind. When I left recruitment and I went from one side of the fence to the other for a while, you remember, Mike? I went to the whole power gen, East Midlands come power gen, and I became the recruitment manager. Now, a fellow called Ian Harvey took over my patch, and I had, after that March episode with the gun, I achieved Directors Club or Founders Club that year or something, but they still haven't paid me very much. So I left. Anyway, a fellow called Ian Harvey took over my patch, which is the Redditch, Solihull, Midlands bit, and I'd left a paper trail. Joe Soap hasn't had a raise for 18 months, knows to wait until X, managed his expectations at 5%, whatever else. I'd also told the customer the same thing. Now, Ian Harvey, he became a supplier to me, told me every time he phoned the client or one of my contractors or one of my clients and said, oh, you never guess, he wants 10%. It'd be like, oh, yeah, Callum told me, no, it's fine. All right. Now, what did I do right for it all to be so blooming easy, right? And I think what I did is I managed everybody's expectations completely up front. And that doesn't matter if it's a new customer, you've just made your first placement, or an old customer, whatever else. It's a good story now, right? And you'll be able to, because you lost a customer once, Mike, and you'll tell the story. This one was a lawnmower salesman, and he supplied green slades of Newton Abbot. It sounds like a real company, that, doesn't it? But anyway, and he'd drive past and all his lawnmowers, were outside, beautiful, shiny, and everything else, because he's a lawnmower specialist. And one day he drove past, and all his competitors are there. They swapped suppliers, and he went in. And this is probably a fictitious story. I don't know if it's true. And he went in and said, why have you changed? Oh, well, they got self-sharpening blades. He said, well, how's it got self-sharpening blades? Oh, and it's a 5 horsepower. And yes, so is ours. And it does this. Yes, so does ours. And the business owner said, well, you never told me. I didn't know. Right? Yeah,
massively important. In fact, I'll tell that story because it supports that. There was a well-known chocolate manufacturer in South Birmingham, and they had a big IT division that ran things for them, and we were the sole supplier. Well, we were what's called a pre-supplyship, so we got the requirement first, and then we could give it out afterwards. And we'd been hitting all the SLAs. So in terms of the numbers, right, fantastic. The guy that ran it, Carl Bevan, I used to get on tremendously well with. Go out for lunch every 3 months. Look at the numbers; they're all good. We're brilliant, right? We're absolutely fine. He then tells me I'm retiring and I'm going to hand over to someone else, and she'll be coming in. And she said, can she leave it a few months and then she'll give you a ring at 6 weeks and you can come in. Okay. So sure enough, 6 weeks later, she rings me. I go in with all my papers and everything. And she says, Mike, I don't know whether you want to sit down or stand up or leave, but I'm sacking you. I'm letting you go. Now, this was a big shock to me because it's like about 3 million quid's worth of business we were sticking through ITnet in those days. Just said the name of the company.
Yeah,
anyway,
well, we all knew who it was.
we were sticking this money
Do they
through.
still exist anyway?
No, I don't think they do now. They're
Yeah,
part of Serco or something. But they were sticking this money through, and this was like a big hole. It's like, oh my god! I said, but I got all the SLAs. Yeah, I know you have, Mike. But I've got to be honest with you, they really hate you. I mean, not me personally because I didn't manage the site, but they really hate your company. It's like, what are you saying to me now? And she told me some of the things that the bloke that ran it did or didn't do. I mean, he was basically letting people down a lot. And I wouldn't say lying, but he was exaggerating the truth and promising things and not delivering. So we were getting the numbers in.
Yeah.
My God, it was hard work for them. Now, it wasn't his fault, actually. It was my fault for overloading him with work. Let me just say that.
Okay.
But the point there is sometimes the numbers can mislead us. Sometimes the numbers say we're doing a great job because we're putting people in, we're making placements, we're doing well. But actually, you've got to reach out. You've got to understand, well, what do you really think of us? And too few agencies do it. And I'll tell you, we have a thing called VOTC, which we teach people, called Voice of the Customer. And it's a way that you can liberate this information. And we started using a really early version of it following this ITnet debacle back in the day.
Good sales pitch going on here, guys.
Yeah. Well, we're not selling it because
you don't do it anymore for only
But you can use it's easy. You can just Google it and do it. But the point is, people are very reticent to do it, and I think it's because they don't want to know. Really,
yeah.
I think, but you should know, because if there's a problem, the problem normally only comes out several weeks or even months down the line when it's too late. Like it was too late for me to rescue that business because it was gone. If I'd have known early on that they weren't happy with what we did, I would have nailed it and we would have kept the account. So I think as well, this comes down to time, I think, to a certain extent, and willingness. But if you own a recruitment business, if you run one and you've got people working for you, you must have direct contact with the people that they do business with, the hiring managers and decision makers. And you must know exactly what they think of you, because if you don't, what happens is if the market drops a little bit, you get left high and dry. Because they go to the agencies, not only are finding people for them, but they like dealing with them. And that's a really big takeaway, I think. That's never changed, really, to be fair.
Do you remember in the book, In Search of Excellence, I can't remember who read it, but one of the managers...
Tom Peters, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. He had this managing by wandering around, right?
Yeah, 40% of your time. Yeah.
So, I mean, I call it shooting the breeze. So you phone your customer, or you drop your customer an email saying, John, next Tuesday about 11ish, can I have 10 minutes, 5 minutes? Just give a quick phone call. Just want to know what's going on. A couple of questions. Or the great one I used to find, by the way, if you're new to this and you're just looking for an angle, is the email say, John, can you help me?
Yeah.
And they go, people love helping people, right?
That 100%, that still works.
Does it? Yeah. Can you help me? And they inevitably would, because you'd phone up with a real question, right? It might be something else. And in that, and they, like we were talking before, the more time they spend with you, the more time they think they should spend with you. You value to their opinion. And then you could say, by the way, I know, I'm looking through the numbers here, we placed John and Kirsty and Fred over the last 12 months. How are they doing? Oh, well, we had to sack Fred. Oh, you never told us about that. I mean, do we owe you some money or something? I mean, for heaven's sake, do tell us, and keep building that relationship.
On that, all right, you just mentioned the magic word there, telephone.
Oh, yeah.
Right, you mentioned the magic word now. When I started, and the same as you, there was no email, and we had faxes, telex, which I've never quite worked out what a telex is, to be honest.
I'm older, I know.
Okay, and telephones, right? So you rang up people a lot. Yeah. And I still do it. I've done it the last couple of days. I've had some gaps. I've just been ringing people up.
Yeah.
Like, how are you? It's a great line. How are you? I mean, what a great way to start. Now, I'll tell you the interesting thing about this.
Poor Kirsty's still hanging on there.
Questions burning in my brain, but you finish this point, Mike, and then I'm jumping in.
You can come in, Kirsty, right? But this is an important story because a lot of people want their people to use the phone more. You have like two levels of relationship with a client. One, their clients or prospects, and the other is their friends. Now, I don't mean like mates you get in the pub with or anything. Well, it could be, but you cross into the friend zone. And that means you can ring up for no reason other than saying, how the devil are you? How are you?
Well, I mean, that takes you got to get over the bridge to do that.
Well, I was about to say, but to get to that stage, what you have to do is add value. You have to, one way or another, add value to them. And these days we have lots of ways of doing that, of course. We talked about it a lot on this show, ways through content, through events that you run, through making introductions with other people they think, that they might be interested in. There's lots of ways that you can do it, but gradually the more you talk to people, and this is a telephone thing, not an email thing or even a social media thing, but the more you talk to people, the more they let slip little bits of information about them.
Yeah.
And the more you know about them, the easier it is to ring up and say, "Yeah, how are you then?" Or, "Hey, how was that wedding you went to?"
That's right.
Or how was the marathon you ran, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to get them in the friend zone, and you won't get them in the friend zone unless you pick up the phone or you go and see them.
Yeah. Now I've got to say something here. You can do business with friends, right? Very easily.
Yeah.
Getting into business with a friend is a bit more difficult, but so this is not a hoodwinking exercise, because a lot of the salesmen I worked with that are very money motivated took great delight in pretending to be somebody's friend, right? Now, if you really are, I just want to go a bit off topic here, Mike, but it's really important. The customers that I liked, I did more business with.
Yeah.
It's just the truth. And they did more business with me, right? And it's easier then to go and play. Rob Spiteri, he's probably retired a long time ago now, but at Severn Trent Water.
Got some great stories about him.
Yeah, and Ron McCrell. But anyway, but I used to go and play pool and have a couple of pints of beer on a Saturday night with Ron, and Rob used to laugh his socks off. He said if Ron McCrell could see us now, he'd be buying £247 bottles of wine to try and get my business, and here am I sharing my pint with you. But anyway, so please don't, I say this to anybody, don't try and be a friend of someone who you just don't like, all right? It's not going to work, all right? The whole thing is going to be fake, and it's very sad, all right? Twice in my career, I remember phoning a customer up at the end of the month and going, "Oh, bugger, I'm like £1,000 off," or whatever, and saying to the customer, "I know we agreed XYZ deal for Joe, but would you mind if I just charged you another £15 an hour?" or whatever it was, all right? Both times, the customer said, "Easy, no problem at all. For what you do for me, Callum, is worth it."
Yeah.
But that was the tail end of my career, where I realised that I could be completely authentic with these people. I could tell them how it is. And when a deal didn't happen, although it hurts because you are struggling to survive in a business world, if the deal doesn't work out, then and so be it,
Well, we believe. Oh, Kirsty,
right, Kirsty's turn.
Can I please ask my question? Because I think it's a really good one.
Well,
so
we'll decide that, and the viewers back home will, Kirsty.
Well,
I want you to vote on this one, all 7 of you.
They'll be on my side. So the question I have is, I am obviously a millennial. So the world that we're in today is quite different from the 90s in many ways, similar in lots. One of the big things I think that, Callum, you already alluded to, people are often bombarded with messages in a way that they perhaps weren't back in the day. They've got LinkedIn, they've got texts coming through to their phone, they've got emails pinging, they've got everything.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people are protected in a lot of ways. They'll have somebody managing their social media, or they'll have gatekeepers or whatever. Is there something from the past? Is there something that you used to do now that nobody does that you think can either break those barriers or help people to differentiate themselves from everybody else who's just noise? Because I think that's a really common problem that people have when you're starting a relationship with a potential client or candidate, I suppose. Is it a good question?
It is, but I maintain that if I actually wanted to get to talk to someone, I would find a method of communication, a method, doesn't matter what it was. And by the way, that might be a letter.
Yeah.
Might be a letter. I have actually got a piece of paper out and handwritten, Joe Soap, ABC Electronics, and signed it, Callum McCormack at the bottom. Saying, I'm after your help. Can you spare me 2 or 3 minutes, please? Next week. This is my phone number. I don't know, whatever. But after you've found a contact medium, and you're absolutely right, it might be almost impossible, right? But there's nothing wrong with a postcard, a greetings card, anything. But I remember phoning Dudley Council, Mike, at about 6:30, and this very eloquent lady picked up the phone, and I thought, this is the IT director. I just knew it because it was right. Hello, IT department. And I said, oh, hello, I'm after. Well, it wasn't Denise Plumpton, but whoever, right? And I could tell it was her. And she went, no, she's not available. I'm the cleaner. I said, you sound like a very posh cleaner, if you don't mind me saying. Would it be a good idea if I dropped a business card in the post for her so she knows who she's been talking to? Yes, that'd be a good idea. So I got my business card. I turned it into a postcard, right? That big. I put a stamp on it. I put her address on the back and I put it in the post. My business card, tiny thing it was. And I don't think I ever spoke to her, but you've just got to try. You've got to be creative. Be a great
story if you just said you was the biggest.
I was you don't want it.
Can I give you a couple of tips? Can I give you a couple of tips in my turn, right? So, okay, so the first thing is if you can find out if people are early finishers or late, early starters, late finishers. That's a really important thing because back in the day there were no mobiles. You'd ring in, get put through to security.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you'd say, can I speak to
They would put you through, yeah.
Definitely. But it's even better now with mobiles. And of course, with things like Lusher around, you can actually get the mobiles sometimes. So, but even when you start to work with someone, the first question is, the first question is, can I be mobile? The second question is, are you an early starter or late finisher? And then you write it down on CRM, and that's when you ring them. And that makes a massive difference. Mm-hmm. Second thing is what Callum said, and you know this because we've done shows on it. You can use a variety of different ways. In fact, there are 5 ways, and we're going to do a show on all 5. Right? So you don't need to worry about it. Just come for that show. There are 5 ways that you can start a conversation with somebody that doesn't want to speak to you. Right? And one of them will work. And what Callum said is absolutely true. I always knew that if I'd got a target that I was going for, a high value target, I always knew that eventually I would get to them one way or the other. I'll get to them and I won't give up until I do. And there are so many more ways now than we had back then that you can do. But half of it is the utter, total self-belief that you will succeed. You will get through. There's no way that you're not speaking to me. I mean, you might not want to do business with me. Well, that's fine. But you are going to speak with me one way or the other. And I think if you use these conversation starters that we'll be talking about in that future show, I think you'll see it's not as hard as you might think.
No, it's not. Oh, well, I'm okay. So this was a long time ago, but I went so I left Computer People, did some other stuff, and then went back with Dick again, but at CSS Trident. And I went from 0 to hero in 18 months. And as I said, Ian Harvey said everybody's a dream. And that's because I worked so hard and rejected those customers that were a pain in the bloody arse, to be honest. And I kept hold of those people that did talk to me, that did have the time of day, that were polite and everything else completely. I almost shared, my fears with them as well. And sometimes they would say, oh, they keep sending me CVs. I remember bringing a big folder to Dave Carter at Britannic and so just put all the CVs in this folder and give them to me. Oh, that's a good idea. I'll do that then.
Do you know what? Well, I know Kirsty wants to kick in there with various things, but I just want to end on this.
Point, Mike, and then I've got to round up.
It's something that you've said many times, that the world of business generally is full of the greys, and you don't mean hair color like I've got. It's a lack of personality and something about them, really. And I think society's beaten it out of people. But if you've got a choice between dealing with someone that's got a bit of personality and is interested, as well as being interesting, and listens and acts upon what they hear, whether that's personal or someone's interest that they can then talk about, or whether it's listening to a vacancy and really nailing it, and someone that works really hard. And all of these things have always been the case, 100%. It's just that in the past, that's where success came from, because there was nothing else. Now we have all these tools and we have everything. It's kind of like, well, we don't need to do all that because we've got all these tools. You
still need a frigging relationship. Otherwise, you're just shoveling shit.
Well, just one last story, Kirsty. I've got to go there.
One last story, because we are going to overrun, and I don't like that.
I know you hate that part. Yeah, well, okay. Well, look, when I first started, one of my jobs was to take out contractors. That was my job, right?
Yeah.
And a couple of months in, my boss called me in and said, he got my credit card sheet on his desk with red writing on it. It had been from the sales director, which was Tony Coombs.
Yeah.
Coombs had obviously written some things on here, and I thought I was going to get a bollocking for spending money. And I was saying, well, I did what you... No. You've not spent anywhere near enough money. If this comes through Tony again, he's really going to flip his lid, right? Get out there and spend some bloody money.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it, right? I had to go out a lot to spend the money they wanted me to spend. But that's the thing that built our empires.
Yeah.
The fact that we were out there talking to people, buying drinks. And I know you can't do that now. You buy coffees or whatever. And
Kirsty, I got one for me as well.
Okay,
one for me. Right. Only 5 years ago, I was driving through an industrial estate near Milton Keynes. I can't tell you who it is. And I was with one of my salesmen, and I said, 25 years ago, I used to go door knocking, He said, never. I said, yeah, watch. Got out the car, went into this company. I said, hey, I'm just driving past. I hope you don't mind. What do you do here? Blah, 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 blah. And we do software development and whatever else. I went, oh, why? Is there someone in development I could just have a quick word with, And there's some development director fellow came out. And I got a vacancy.
Yeah.
Door knocking.
Door knocking,
Is that one of your 5?
No, it isn't, but we can make it 6 now.
5.5. Okay. Right, guys. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time.
Well, I've got more stories.
No, you have to keep them to yourselves. You have to keep them to yourselves now. So in a second, I'm going to come to both of you and ask what your top tip is for somebody. But before then, Mike, next time in, I believe, first week of August, we're having a show about how to get around gatekeepers, aren't we?
Yeah, it's the very show I talked about. It's the gatekeeper.
It's so easy.
Callum's coming back to tell us how to do it. We're just not going to show up for the show at all, really. Yeah, no, it's not as difficult as people think. Oh, yes, how to get around gatekeepers, how to talk to the person that you want 2 weeks' time. Be there, be square.
Okay, fantastic. So, Callum, Mr. McCormack, I'm coming to you first. Now, when we did this earlier, you said that this was your top tip, which is to use the word need. Is that still your top tip?
Yeah, it's all about being executed on the 31st of March. Change your vocabulary so that you do more. Make it easier, more fun. Don't do it for the money. Do it for the love. The money will come.
I like it. Okay, now, Mike, what was your top tip? Because I see you typed one in cheekily, other than the one you originally put.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, can we go with mine? Yeah, there. Right. My top tip, you want to be successful above and beyond the call of duty. A and B, the C of D. It's basically doing more than you need to do with people, not just clients and prospects and candidates, but people you work with, everybody. If you do more than they expect you to do consistently, it's harder to fail than succeed.
Adios.
Fantastic.
If you want to know more about me, go and look up DX Commander on YouTube.
Yes.
He's the boy.
Yes, you can indeed. Okay. Right. I want to say thank you very much to Callum, obviously, for being magnificent and for completely teaching me to let go. Just let go of the show.
Just relax and swear.
Just relax and chill. Obviously, I want to say thank you to Mike, and I want to say a big thank you to everybody who's watched. Hopefully, we will see you in 2 weeks when we're talking about gatekeepers.
Adios.
Adios.